much for joining us.
Oh, no, thank you for the invitation.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the organization?
Yes, so my name is Melissa Marantes from Orlando Center for Justice. I'm one of the founders of the organization, and three of us got together. We realized there was a lot of immigrant community members who were navigating the legal system, and it can be very difficult. So we wanted to create a space where we could be there to advocate, but also to provide legal services. We're a group of attorneys, and we help here in the Orlando area.
Can you share with us your journey from working in advertising to founding the Orlando Center for Justice?
Yes, so it's kind of interesting. While I was working in advertising, I helped out as a guardian ad litem, and so I would work with children and children's issues, and they've always been a passion of mine. And funny enough, that's actually what brought me to working with immigrants. So when the DREAM Act came out in 2012, well, it actually came out earlier and didn't go through. There then became this thing called DACA for children, and so I became very active in it and helping with children's issues. And ever since, it's something that touches my heart. So I really love working with the families and especially with the children.
How does Orlando Center for Justice bridge the access to justice gap in Central Florida?
So Orlando Center for Justice is a bridge. We say that we're a bridge to the justice gap because we don't provide services normally for those who would qualify for legal aid. We'll try to get them to a program that may exist, but we also don't. We serve those that don't have enough to maybe hire a private attorney. So it's sort of this in-between group that can get lost because they're about average income or just a family that's getting on their feet. Especially when you have newcomers to our area, it can be very difficult to figure out legal services when you're figuring out housing and work and life. And so as some of those things fall into place, we're that kind of that stopgap where we can help be that bridge. Once they reach family stability, then they can go off and hire a private attorney or finish out with us, but at least we're able to get them on their feet.
What technologies or innovative programs do you employ?
So it's very interesting when it comes to technology. I think most people picture an attorney in a courtroom, and so it's the attorney and the client, kind of what you see on TV. But in our case, we try to reach as many people as possible. So one of our programs right now is called the Hello Project, and it's a program that's partially funded through grants, and it's a vision of ours as a way to use technology and innovation to be able to serve more people. So we are present physically in the city of Orlando, but we also have virtually people viewing us in Kissimmee and others viewing us at the Hispanic Federation. So they're in different parts of the city so that we can also have access and share more. And we hope to grow it so we can also have a presence in Seminole County. We've found that we have people coming from over 12 different counties to try to get information. There we'll kind of orient them on the process. What is the immigration process? How do you change your address? How do you move courts? What do they expect? What should happen? Different situations with different people end up in Florida and why they're here, and trying to help them navigate that system in a language that may not be their native one.
You've served over 3,000 individuals from 82 countries. Can you share a story that embraces some of the impact that your organization has had?
Yes. So one in particular comes to mind is a client of ours that we can call Brian. And Brian came to us really overwhelmed and worried because he had been paying a private attorney and he just ran out of money. He lost his job, things happened, but he had a deadline that was a week away. And it would really make a difference in his life. He was fleeing violence as a person who's LGBTQ and just had suffered a lot of violence in his home country. And so he needed to present a case within that 1 week. And so we said, okay, we're gonna help you. So, moving forward, we were able to help him file. We said, if, we can work together quickly. We helped him get it filed. And I can say that now today, he is a permanent resident in the United States. His case has since been granted. And that's something that wouldn't have happened if he didn't have somewhere to go to kind of fill in that gap. So that's, I think, a symbol of what we do. One more that I think is really just to show, since I love children's issues, we have a little girl that had her leg amputated. And unfortunately for Patty, she was with her dad and he just couldn't care for her anymore. So one day at the babysitter's, he'd drop her off every day, pick her up every day, and one day he just didn't come back to pick her up. So it was a very sad situation. The babysitter called and asked for help. What do I do? We stepped in and got involved. They had reached out to DCF, and maybe some confusion and stuff. So we were able to help out. We got involved, and we explained. We helped explain that we need to. The child would have to have someone to care for them. So through the court systems and what they permit, we were able to let the courts know that we had a child that needed care. And the babysitter, funny enough, was the one that said, "You know what? I have a real heart for her. I'll step up and be her caretaker."
Aw.
And it's been a beautiful ever since. So she now, is with a new caretaker. They've been able to get her assistance as far as her medical and different things, and she's doing really well in school here. Funny enough, during the hurricanes, they were also affected, and through the same organization, we try, to reach out for all their needs, even if it's not legal. And so we reached out to some of the people that help with funding, and they were able to get her some of the things she lost. So she lost her refrigerator, some, washer and dryer that all got filled with water because of the hurricane damage. And so we're able to get her some of those things replaced. So it's just all the things we do to care for the families all around.
How does your organization inspire and mentor law students to become community lawyers?
So I love working with students, especially those that are either an undergrad, or we've even had high school students. That we have a magnet program here in Orlando. So sometimes students will come from that program, or at the law level. So during the summers, we get students from all over the United States. Any of the AB accredited schools, they'll come and they'll do an internship with us. And then some of the local schools, they also do volunteer hours with us. So what we like to do is help people see the families, meet the families, experience what it's like to walk alongside them as they're learning also their legal career, what they can do and what are options. And our hope is that the individuals that we have and that we have with us will either enter public service as like a community lawyer, or if they enter, in a private field, that they will then donate back their time. So it's really exciting to see when we call them, we check in with them 3 years or 5 years later and see what they're doing. And a lot of them are giving back in different ways.
That's great. What is the role of community lawyers in achieving social equity?
So the community has a very diverse background, a very diverse set of socioeconomical situations. And I think that what we want to do as lawyers is not just let the dollar be something that's stopping someone from getting fair representation, from getting fair access to courts, for getting their story being told. There's something so beautiful about someone being able to really feel that they were heard. It might be the first time ever. And so I think that community lawyers really stand in that gap and have that presence to make sure that everyone has a chance to be heard, and that they have a fair shot to share their story.
How can members of the community get involved with your organization? And are there any volunteer opportunities or partnerships that locals can participate in?
So we love to have the community as a part of what we do. We say it's kind of like that pay it forward mentality. A lot of our clients give back. A lot of community members who may be touched by some of the issues. We do community clinics. Sometimes we need translators or individuals to help with fundraising and different opportunities. So we're always looking for people to join us. And in June every year, we do a Immigrant Appreciation Day, which is a wonderful cultural festivity with dance and celebration. And so we also ask people to come out and join and be a part of it.
What are your long term goals?
So our long-term vision is to hope that there can be services available in more counties across Central Florida, that we can spread out and be able to make sure that people know what their options are, that they're educated about what they can do, and that they don't fall into the wrong hands. Sometimes people can take advantage and promise to, give them things that don't really exist, and so we try to educate. And so our vision in the future would be a space where people have access to that information, and they can have fair representation in the courts.
How do you see the organization evolving to further closed access to Justice Gap in Florida?
So to further close the access to Justice Gap in Florida, we see two parts. One is an educational component where we can help people who are trying to navigate a foreign language and a system of laws where it can be complex to understand, to kind of understand that through education and through walking alongside them with each step. And on the other side is providing representation for individuals so that they can have an attorney in court. For example, one day we hope to see that all children would have representation in the courts, and especially in the immigration courts, so that they're not alone trying to navigate the system. So it's kind of like a twofold, both education and representation as a way to close that gap.
As a Latina mother and advocate, How have your personal experiences shaped your passion for access to justice?
I realize that I come from a long generation of Latina women in communities that dealt with high amounts of domestic violence, social violence, things that were many years ago hushed and just accepted. And so I think that that's also changed the way I show up, especially when it comes to children's issues and wanting to make sure that they have a voice, that they know that they can be safe, that environments can be. That and I'm happy to say that today we don't have the same situation. We do have a more welcoming and a more talked about community, but I think encouraging people to continue to have those conversations that can be difficult and to encourage people to understand what ways they might have out, especially if they're in any kind of situations of violence. So I think that's shaped a lot kind of the way I show up in this work with the immigrant community.
Yeah. We have an activity,
Okay.
and they have terms in the legal realm that just people don't understand. So we're going to go
Absolutely.
over some of those terms and try to understand them. So what we're going to do is we're going to take off the labels and see what word is underneath.
Okay. Very
And
cool.
I'll grab this side, you can grab that side so that's closer.
Okay.
Exempt status.
Exempt status. So for an individual in the community, there are different statuses that they carry. You have some people, which we call undocumented, and you have some people that are in different legal statuses. So some of those may include permanent resident, they may include TPS, which is like a temporary status, and then you have things like exempt status. So there's different statuses that a person can be in, and it's understanding which status is your own or someone that you're helping out. Try this one?
Yeah.
Okay. T visas are a visa for trafficking. So for a person who is here in the U.S. on account of trafficking, could be things that are familiar, like, for example, sex trafficking, individuals that are forced to do things that they don't wish. But also can be things like labor trafficking that is not as commonly thought of maybe or seen, but they come up a lot. So T visas are one of the visas that protect immigrants who may have been a victim of something here. VAWA. So it's also another protection under our laws. It's based on the Victims Protection Act. And it's funny because there's women in the title, but it both applies to women and men. It's intended to protect people who are victims of domestic violence at the hands of their either citizen or resident partners. Let's see what we have here. Special immigration status, SIJS. So this one's particularly for children. In Florida, it's children under the age of 18. They are, if they are a victim of abuse, abandonment, or neglect, they can, through help, of course, or if someone finds them, like through the DCF system, something is noticed, then a child may apply for special immigrant juvenile status, but they first have to have a state court order. So the state says, yes, we find there's abuse, abandonment, and neglect. And then the federal government says, okay, since the state found abuse, abandonment, and neglect, we're going to protect them as children. And it has a path to residency. DACA is something I mentioned earlier on, so deferred action for childhood arrivals. So children that are here, it's limited because it's for children that came in many years ago. So it's not children that are here that are recent arrivals and came now. It's a temporary status, so it's not permanent. It doesn't have a path to citizenship or residency currently. We hope one day it will, but not right now. But DACA does protect children who came maybe unaware or unbeknownst to themselves, maybe with their families or with their parents, and it so protects those children who might not have status. Sometimes what's really interesting is sometimes families migrate to the U.S. with documentation, with residency, but it may be that one of the children aged out of that residency or couldn't be included, and so they end up being under DACA. So it's an interesting situation because it may not even be intentional. What do we got here? Let's see. Oh, cancellation of removal. Okay, so cancellation of removal in the community, they call it the 10-year law or la ley de 10 años, but it's not really that. It's a defense to removal. So if someone's already in court proceedings, one of their defenses may be, please don't allow me to be removed because of my family member. It could be like a wife or a husband, and it could be someone that that they have as a family member that's a resident or a citizen. And so because they would not be able to go with them for whatever reason, sometimes medical, sometimes complications, families with children with autism, for example. So it's a very specific kind of thing, but it is a defense that's used in court. Political asylum is always a hot topic and difficult, I think, for people to understand. Funny enough, it says I was either harmed in my home country and my home country wouldn't protect me, or I have fear of being harmed in the future. And I'm here on account of one of 5 protected grounds, things like race, religion, politics in particular is one of them. But those are all under asylum, and political asylum is because of that. There are countries, for example, like Venezuela, where the politics have caused a lot of damage, a lot of danger, and a lot of harm, and people have fled for their lives. And that's just one of many. There seems to be things that happen all around the world. What it doesn't protect is from common crime, so it's a misunderstanding. But to show that you have asylum, usually only have to show 10% risk of harm, although it can seem that it always feels higher in a courtroom. Let's see this one. U visa. So U visa, I kind of would put in the category with the VAWA and the T visas. It's more like a protection for someone who's been a victim. This is one I like to share with the community so that they understand that if something happens to them with the police, they shouldn't be afraid to come forward. You know, sometimes they may have information about a crime, they were a witness, or they themselves are victims. So in this case, it's protection for victims. So if they're a victim of the crime and they help with the prosecution, they can get a visa.
Well, thank you so much. This was very informative, and I definitely learned a lot. And the work that you're doing is really great because you're right that I'll say missing middle when it comes to income and trying to find help is a difficult place to be. So thank you.
No, thank you so much for the invitation. I know how hard it can be for families when they're just getting by, just making ends meet, and then something happens. So we try to step in that gap when something does.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
If you're enjoying this show, please subscribe to our channel and follow our Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter accounts.